No more psychological test. Psychological test is to quantify people's cognitive, behavioral and emotional psychological activities based on certain rules and psychological principles using certain operating procedures. Psychological test is a tool for psychological measurement. Psychological measurement can help clients understand their emotions, behavior patterns and personality traits in psychological counseling. Psychological test is to design procedures based on psychological principles to measure psychological factors. Psychological test generally measures more representative questions. Psychological test is similar to questionnaire. The difference is that psychological test requires the subject to complete the test as best as possible, while questionnaire only requires the subject to perform normally. A practical psychological test must have reliability and validity. The questions measured by the subjects in the test should be the same, and the answers should also be treated equally. For example, a math test requires the subject to answer, in a football match, 2 players received red cards, how many players are left in the game? To answer this question, you need to understand the rules of football, which is a non-standard game. Explanation. Psychological test is to use psychological science methods and means to infer and quantify the psychological characteristics reflected in people's behavioral activities based on certain principles, and give corresponding scientific guidance. Although psychological testing is a necessary means of psychological research and has been increasingly widely used in real life, it should be noted that psychological testing only provides a certain reference. People develop, grow and change, and psychological testing only provides the characteristics of the individual's condition at the time of the test. Therefore, it is wrong to exaggerate the effect of psychological evaluation. Here I would like to remind you that psychological testing can only provide a professional psychological reference and cannot make a lifelong judgment for a person. No matter who you are, you must be very careful when interpreting the test results, and do not regard the results of psychological tests as lifelong labels. There are many similar psychological tests, but the results of the tests are for reference only. Psychological tests are not the standard of mental health. The details of psychological tests should be analyzed by experts. Because psychological tests are based on the social norms of mental health, the norms of psychological tests are dynamic. For example, the test norms of foreign countries and the test norms of the past may not conform to the general phenomenon of contemporary society. On the other hand, the parties may have a certain mentality when taking the psychological test, and may have another mentality after the test. In addition, whether the psychological test questions are appropriate, whether they are suggestive, the parties' attitude towards psychological tests, and how to analyze the test answers are all factors that affect psychological tests. Psychological tests are called psychological measurements in professional fields, and psychological tests on the internet are mostly entertainment games. Common psychological tests can be divided into the following types according to their purpose. 1. Ability test, including intelligence test and special ability test. The former mainly measures people's intelligence level, and the latter is mostly used for further studies and career guidance services, such as painting, music, manual skills, clerical skills, spatial perception ability, etc. 2. Personality test, mainly measures people's personality, temperament, interests, attitudes and other personality traits and various pathological personality traits. 3. Memory test, including short-term memory test and long-term memory test, mainly used for memory damage caused by trauma and memory loss in the elderly. 4. Adaptive behavior assessment, assess people's social adaptation skills, including wisdom, emotion, motivation, social, sports and other factors. 5. Career counseling test. It is a psychological test that has developed rapidly in recent years. Since many young people hope to not only exert their potential and temperament in future competition, but also adapt to their interests and hobbies, they often seek help from psychologists before choosing a career.